season opens in most parts of the country. Let's talk about cutting a moment. The cutting of a hen turkey. Now, cutting is a very important call that you can use in the spring season. And when we talk about cutting, a lot of people have a particular sound in their head that they have, but that a lot of times that ain't the correct sound. If you'll really listen to a hen, and so you're going to hear a lot of this on a lot of pressure areas if you hunt a lot of public land or you hunt a lot of around a lot of private farms. It's got a lot of turkey hunters on it. I guarantee you within a spring turkey season, you'll hear somebody on a call cutting, whether on a box call, a mouth call, slate call, or whatever the case, and you know it's a call just by the way that they're doing it, because it just doesn't sound natural. And if it don't sound natural to you, it sure ain't going to sound natural to a turkey. The gobbler may shot gobble to it, but that don't necessarily mean he's going to come to it. So cutting can it can kind of deceive you at times, because you can get a turkey gobble and you think, man, you know, he's going to come in, but a lot of times he doesn't, and it was just a shot gobble. Now, with that said, you can use cutting to locate turkeys to make them shot gobble, and it is a very effective tool. But calling them in is a whole different thing. That's where you kind of got to switch sometimes on him. But even when you're working a turkey, cutting can be effective if it's done at the correct time and it's done right and in the right situation, just like with any call. But let me show you kind of how back in the early days, you know, back 30, 40 years ago, this is kind of how we were taught to cut by a lot of guys. And so a lot of us, when we started out turkey hunting, that's been turkey hunting a long time, this was kind of the way that we cut. And I even was guilty of doing this, you know, back when I first started turkey hunting, you know, 30 years ago. You know, probably the first couple of years I turkey hunted, I probably did this too, because in my mind that's what I heard, and so that's what I tried to mimic. But it didn't really work as good until I learned better. Of course, you know, years later I started doing it the right way, and I started using it and having more success. But let me show you right quick what a lot of people will do when it comes to cutting. Now, you can do it on a box call or a mouth call, slate call, whatever the case. But of course, a lot of people do it on a mouth call, and a lot of people do it on a box call too, because the box call is loud. They're locating turkeys. Because most people that cut, they're cutting up in the middle of the day or, you know, mid-morning, and they're trying to get a you know, quiet turkey to gobble, and they're trying to locate one. And like I said, it's very effective. But here's how a lot of people will cut. They'll sit there and they'll go, you know, it's just a pop, 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 or they'll do a mouth call. You'll hear it. I mean, I've heard that so much, and some of you watching this, y'all have heard that too, and you know it just don't sound right, even if you're not a very experienced caller. But that's a lot of times how you'll hear other people cut, and they're trying to get excited, you know, trying to get that turkey to gobble. But that's really not the correct way of cutting. Let me show you what a hen turkey does. If you'll, everything a turkey does, they're listening. Okay, so I want you to picture in your head when you're cutting. I want you to picture that hen throwing her head up and looking around, and what's she looking for? She's looking for a turkey. She's looking for that sound. Maybe she hears another turkey, or she hears another hen down there yelping, or maybe you know, she hears a gobbler and she's you know, kind of excited. She throws that head up, and when she's cutting, she's also listening. So there's a lot of pauses in cutting. There's a lot of pauses that a lot of people don't put into their cut. But and what made me think of this was actually yesterday when I was turkey hunting down in Tennessee. I actually heard a hen start cutting way up on a ridge. She was a good ways off, but she started cutting, and I started cutting back to her, and it you know, I was sitting there listening to her. And it just made me think, you know, now that's a hen. That's correct. And so it's kind of what made me think about doing this video today. But when she was cutting yesterday, there were pauses in it, just like there is every day in every state where the wild turkey exists, 49 states, they pause when they're cutting. So here's what she was doing. She was cutting, she was going. Hear that? There's that pause. It ain't that. It ain't that just erratic cutting. So that's what you want to do. You want to put a lot of pauses in your cuts because that gives it, that real sound. And that's what a hen's doing because when she's clucking and when she's cutting, she's listening. Them pauses is her listening for a response from either another hen or a gobbler. If you're using a mouth call, you want to do the same thing. I personally like a mouth call a little bit better because you can put more feeling in it. And that's not saying I don't cut on a box or a slate, but I like to use a mouth call just because I can put that feeling and I can become that hen and I can kind of, just imagine what she's doing more than I can say with any other call. So you want to put a lot of pauses in there. Now move your hands and throw your sound that way, because that's what a hen's doing when she's cutting. She's looking and she's listening. So her mouth is not at the same direction all the time. That's why as turkey hunters we move our hands and and throw our sound different ways. You want to be that hen that's looking a full circle around, looking for that other turkey to respond to you. Now, also, when I'm cutting, I throw a little bit of maybe a yelp or two because that's what a hen does. In fact, that one yesterday, that's kind of what she did. A lot of times you hear maybe a 1-2 note yelp. See, it just adds that realism into your calling, and it will help you when it comes to calling turkeys in and using that call. Now let's talk about when you should cut. Like I said, a lot of people will use a cut when they're trying to locate a turkey when they've gone quiet, especially in a henned up situation like we got right now in a lot of parts of the country where people are turkey hunting. The gobblers are really henned up right now. I think a lot earlier this year. It seems like they have been in years past. Just seems like they're henned up, and so when gobblers kind of go quiet during the day, people will kind of get up on a high place, or they'll get up, corner of a field or something, and they'll sit for a bit, and they'll try to cut to get a gobbler to respond. Sometimes it works, sometimes it don't. It just depends. But locating a turkey with cutting is a really good way to get one to shot gobble and to kind of know where he's at, and I'm all for that. But let's talk about when you're calling a turkey and one's responded and you're calling him in, and maybe he gets hung up a little bit, or maybe he's kind of out there in still a little bit good ways, and let's just say he's not really coming in very good. Maybe he's got hens, whatever the case, you're trying to call to them. It's a great way to call to hens, especially if you get a hen cutting back at you and you can cut to her and you cut her off. We've talked about calling the hens in the past. That's a great method to call in a hen and for her to drag the gobbler to you is by cutting to the hen, because that cut is an excitement, and so that's a really good method too. But let's say it's a lone gobbler out there and you don't have hens, but let's just say he's out there and he's just gobbling maybe 3 or 4 times. He just wants you to come to him like in nature. So a lot of times you can cut to a turkey even then, but you just don't want to do it a lot. But you can get somewhat excited and tell him, hey, I'm excited, but you still got to come over here to me. You're still going to have to play the game and come over here to where I'm at. So when I try to do that is when he's kind of stopped. If he's kind of gobbling on the same, let's say it's a little ridge top or it's a point. Maybe you're kind of here in one side of the field and he's on the other side. You can kind of see him out there and he's a good ways. If he's just stopping, he's just strutting there and he ain't moving. And you've been yelping to him and clucking to him and doing all this, and he just ain't moving. Call to him. Cut to him. If nothing else working, cut to him and try to get him fired up. Try to get him excited. And a lot of times that can break a gobbler, to come to you. Now again, just don't sit there for 20, 30 minutes just constantly cutting, because that's not natural. But, every once in a while throw a cut in there. It's really an effective tool to get a hung up gobbler unhung. And I've actually unhung them by cutting just a little bit more than what I normally probably would have, say in another situation. But again, I've got them unhung that way. Let me just say this, you know, turkey hunting is kind of hard to teach in a lot of ways because every gobbler is different. I remember a turkey that I shot several years ago here in Virginia. This has been years ago. Well, not, you know, years to years, but it's been several years ago. And I remember the turkey. He was a real nice turkey, you know, had a double beard. And shot him, you know, like the third, fourth day of season here. And that's how I killed that turkey, was I just cut to him. He wanted cut, and every time I'd cut to him, he'd get fired up. When I'd stop cutting and I'd just go quiet, go soft, he'd kind of just stay in one spot. Then I'd start cutting to him again and yelp to him. He'd get fired up. He'd move a little bit closer. I'd go quiet, you know, because that's kind of what you're supposed to do, you know, normal. And you know, then a few minutes later he'd go back, and so he'd get closer as I would, you know, get aggressive to him, and then he would go back when I'd stop. Okay, so you want to let the gobbler tell you what he wants. So it took me a few minutes to figure it out, and once I sat there and thought, well, every time I do this, he gets closer, so I'm just going to pour it on him. And man, I got up there that morning, and I was... And man, he'd gobble back. Here he come in closer. So the closer he got, the more he gobbled. I'd let him gobble 2 or 3 times, then I'd cut to him and yelp. Then I'd let him gobble 2 or 3 times, then I'd cut and yelp to him. And I mean, if you'd have heard me way up on the hill somewhere, you'd have thought, man, that guy is just pouring it on. But it worked. On that particular gobbler, he come right in, full strut, come into about 30 yards, and I killed him. But if I had just sat there and was afraid to call and think, you know, I don't know, you know, I don't normally do this, then I'd have probably never killed him because he would have lost interest and he would have went away. Now, a lot of gobblers, you can't do that. You've got to play the game right, go quiet, let them come in, looking for you, call soft, all that. But every turkey is a little bit different, and so you have to let the turkey tell you when he wants you to cut at him and when he wants you to get aggressive and not. And so a lot of times if you'll do that, you'll figure it out. Just by reading the gobbler, let him tell you. So cutting is a very effective tool, even when you're working a gobbler in, and you can be successful doing that, but just remember to cut right. A pot call also, or a slate call, glass call, crystal call, whatever you like, is a great thing to cut with also, so you can use that. Just remember to put the pauses in there. Move that slate around, kind of go in a circle, you know, kind of call behind you. Again, just be that hen that's going in different directions. So a pot call is a really great call to do that on also. But remember, cutting can be effective when you're calling turkeys in or when you're trying to locate them. You just got to do it right. Let the turkey tell you kind of what he wants. And a lot of times, it will be the very call that will save your turkey hunt that particular day. And man, it's a great feeling when you got a gobbler. This is too responsive, it's just kind of laid back, you ain't gobbling very much, but you can get him fired up all of a sudden, and all of a sudden you change his mood, and you see that big old fan and that white head coming up through there, and you know you've changed that turkey's mood. That is a great, great feeling when you know that you've done something like that, and you become a better caller because of it. So try cutting this turkey season a little bit more, and you'll be surprised how many turkeys that you might change their mood or locate when mostly all you've done is just clucked and yelped a few times. Cutting is a great, great tool for any turkey hunters to have in their arsenal of turkey tips to use. Hey, make sure to subscribe to this channel. Just hit that subscribe button down the corner. I'd really appreciate it. Also, check out my line of calls, all my calls at springfevercustomcalls.com. My Old Sly Signature Series slate call and my mouth calls, my Old Sly mouth calls, and also the Old Sly box call that a lot of people has just enjoyed and having success with. So make sure to check them out also on springfevercustomcalls.com and check out all their other calls as well. Check out my website, DaleOutdoors.com, where you can get the hats and the shirts and all the other Dale Outdoors merchandise. You go over there and check that out. Also, check me out on social media, my Facebook and Instagram. Follow me there. Also, check me out on Pateron and come over and give us a tip on Pateron if you like to support us a little bit with a $5, $10 tip just to help us when our videos get demonetized because of the content. We'd really appreciate it. It helps, and I appreciate everybody that's came over there this year so far and helped us on Pateron. It's going to really help a lot, and I really appreciate that. Also, check out SOSO Outdoors and all the other links below, and I'd really, really appreciate it. And stay tuned to this channel because we're going to have a lot more turkey hunting content in the weeks to come, and hopefully turkey here pretty soon. Turkey hunt we can show you, but man, right now they're just henned up. They're not saying very much, but you just got to stay after it, get out there and keep grinding, and eventually it's going to happen for you. So you stay tuned to the next video for all the other content and more great turkey hunting information and tips, and we'll see you in the next video.